Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We've got looks like about a dozen people or so in. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world that you are. My name is Aaron Sheehan. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Oro. Very new here. If you've attended previous Tech Talks, Anna has been the Oro moderator, and I am at least temporarily replacing her for a time. As a reminder, this webinar is recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel for later viewing. So if you need to get any of the information out of the slides or you want to see any of this, you can look at the recording. If there's something specific that you want, please contact us after the webinar. Of course, there will be time for questions and answers. Questions at least, maybe answers at the end, depending on how good your question is. And we'll hold all the questions until the very end for our guests. So let me go ahead and go through the agenda. So the topic of today's Oro Tech Talk is payment integrations and payment best practices in commerce. We'll be going over the payment solutions landscape for enterprise e-commerce. We'll be looking at the differences between B2B and B2C and some regional differences in payment methods and the various channels and methods of commerce, and looking at some common configurations for multi-site and marketplace payments, and then wrapping things up with some integration best practices. Assuming this is a technical audience, if you're not reasonably technical, you might be in the wrong webinar, but feel free to ask questions anyway. And then we'll do Q&A at the very end. A couple of housekeeping and announcements just for our audience. We are planning more tech talks for Q3 and Q4 of this year. This is my email address on the screen. You can't click it because it's a webinar, but I can give it to you afterwards if you need it. Please reach out to me if you have any ideas. If you want to volunteer to be a co-host with us or lead a tech talk you think would be interesting for our audience, please contact me. I would love to hear from you. Also would like to make the announcement that Oro Hive is now live after many months of work. So Oro Hive is the hub. It is kind of a replacement for Oro Academy. It has the content from Oro Academy as well as a lot of other resources aimed at our agency and technology partners and independent developers who are supporting the Oro ecosystem. So website is live, orohive.com. Go there if you have suggestions or feedback, or there's something you expect to find that is missing. You can use the same email address that's on the screen, contact me, and I would be happy to have a conversation with you about how we can improve it. And finally, last but not least, the annual long-term support release, the big release of Oro, is coming out this month. The partner release candidate demo will be next Wednesday on March 13th. This is typically locked to partners. If you are a partner or a developer, a member of an Oro partner organization, either on the agency side or on the technology side, you can register. Again, you can't click your screen because this is a webinar, but please contact me if you don't have a link, and we can get you registered for that. And that will be a demonstration and walkthrough of the key new features and infrastructural changes coming with 6.0, and there is quite a lot in it. So I have talked a lot. You are not here to listen to me talk. You are here to listen to these two guys talk. As I point at my camera, I'm assuming that you can all see their faces. Happy to introduce our speakers. Yvonne, our consulting director at Oro, and Antoine, the product manager for Stripe, who will be talking about payments. And I will now shut up and hand things over to Yvonne.
Thank you very much, Aaron. So guys, today we're going to check what we can do about the B2B, B2C, and other commerce flows in Oro Commerce, and how is Stripe going to help us to implement all this magic. So as you probably know, there are tons of different business flows in the commerce, B2B, B2C, and others. Some of them are about the interaction between the seller and the buyer. Usually it's called B2C or business to customer. Others about business to business interaction, like when the company purchasing from the company. Sometimes it can be even both. For example, let's say you have several websites, and for one website you're using B2B flows, for the other website you're using B2C flows. And This is a typical multi-site strategy. And in addition to that, there are hybrid models when you are combining these several flows in one, like for example, B2B2C, which is also called the marketplace, or B2B2B, which is like another side of a marketplace where you have an intermediate person between the buyer and the seller. Next slide, please. So we're going to start from checking the payment needs for every of the use case of the typical B2B, B2C, and other business flows, and we're going to start from the B2B. So typical payment methods in B2B usually based on some kind of agreement between the buyer and the seller. It can be a contract, it can be some kind of official or unofficial agreement between the sides, one way or the other. There is agreement, and there is a need to represent it somehow in the e-commerce. And the most typical way to do it is usage of the payment terms. So payment terms are something that represents an agreement. That could be a name, like for example, net 30, net 60, and so on. It could be something else. And in many cases, in addition to the payment terms, you also need to use invoices in order to confirm that you indeed paid for the order. And these invoices could be also implemented in our commerce, either through attachments to the order or through some kind of custom implementation. Again, it really depends on the use case. Finally, you could also use personalized payment methods. Then the typical flow is not enough and you want to implement something unusual there. And again, in most cases, the standard payment methods with minor customizations covers pretty much all the use cases. You could also restrict those payment methods using, let's say, addresses, credit limits, total, and other kind of stuff. Next slide, please. In addition to the standard B2B payment methods like payment terms and personalized methods, there are also typical B2C payment methods. So these methods includes credit cards, check money orders, subscriptions, and so on. All these methods are really useful not only for the B2B, not only for the B2C, but also for the B2B. And again, they're included into the e-commerce too. Some special types of the products, for example, software licenses or any other products that requires renewal, could also use the payment subscription. And in order to implement the standard B2C methods like the credit cards and payment subscriptions, Oro has integrated with Stripe in order to provide a seamless experience for your customer.
So if we delve a little deeper inside the payment methods, we had Yevhen just telling us what were the great payment types for every kind of business model. Behind that, we also have, under a single payment type, we have multiple payment methods. And we can see here that they will be also very different depending on the geography that you are targeting. So cards are still extremely popular, of course, in North America and Europe. But if you're going for APAC, for example, their wallets will be really predominant. Other than that, we have a very wide variety of payment methods. Some of them might be alternative and bring some extra functionality for the user. Some of them might also be extremely local and only available in certain geographies and very well preferred in certain geographies. One important figure I'd like to hammer on today is that 85% of the shoppers will completely abandon a purchase if their preferred payment method is not present on the website where they are doing the purchase. And that includes payment methods that are also very local. For example, if you want in Europe to sell in the Netherlands, you will have to have IDO. Without IDO, a lot of customers don't have credit cards and won't be able to purchase on your website. Next slide, please. So to tell a bit more about the different payments method types that we will have, let's start by the right with maybe the most esoteric ones. There's a lot of countries in the world where you don't really have a lot of credit cards, and everything is all very based on cash. And people pay with cash on the internet also. For that, they will use vouchers that they purchase in shops, and that can be usable on the internet after that. I talked on the previous slides about alternative payment methods. One of the most important ones would be buy now, pay later, which is a payment method by itself in its implementation. In Stripe, we do include directly some of these BNPL options, for example, Klarna, which will be the most popular one in a lot of geographies. When we are talking connections with banks, also, there's quite a lot of complexity here. We have bank redirections first, which will be extremely local. For example, in Germany, we will have a system called Sofort that can be used to redirect to your bank. So you are redirected to the website of your bank from the e-commerce website. You approve a transaction, and after that, you go back to the website. Another type of payment method that will be quite popular around the world is bank debits. In the US, it will be ACH, bank debits. In Europe, most of the time, it will be SEPA, bank debits. So there you give directly on the e-commerce websites your bank accounts, and after that, you will have to sign some kind of paper, eventually digitally, to approve your accounts to be debited of the corresponding amounts. Last one, and maybe the most interesting one in the cases we are talking today, and please, could we go to the next slide, is the bank transfers. Bank transfers are extremely different because they are not piloted from the e-commerce website. What is happening is that you order your products on the e-commerce website, but after that, the payment is done from your own bank. And most of the time, you will go to the website of your own bank or to an internal system of yours that is connected to the bank to do this payment, meaning that you can pay less than the amount of the invoice. For example, if you have multiple installments, meaning that you can eventually pay more also, like pay multiple invoices at the same time. Could we please go to the next slide? And there's a big complexity with that, of course, and this is around reconciliation, because you can have multiple payments for one invoice or one payment for multiple invoice. How do we know exactly which payment is done for which, by which customer and for which invoice? Traditionally, the way it is done is very manual. You take your bank statements, you download them on Excel, and you check them against the different orders you have one by one. Of course, for B2B companies, this takes a lot of time and this costs a lot of money. So at Stripe, we have designed a system where we are using a virtual bank account that belongs to Stripe that has a unique IBAN or equivalence in the US. So a unique number for each one of the merchant's customers. So when money comes to this account, we of course know for which merchant it is, and we're able to transfer it to his Stripe account. But we also know from which purchaser it comes. And from there, we are able to automatically reconciliate these transactions with the original orders. We can move to the next slide. A typology to end this brief overview, a typology of different type of factors you will encounter around payments. First one, you will have traditional PSPs. PSPs like, for example, Wordline. These PSPs do not do the acquisition, which means that you have to connect also to your bank, in this cases, to a local bank that will do the acquisition. And most of the time, you will have to take a specific type of bank account to do that, especially in regions where you have every regulation, like in Europe. So this is something also that you will have to do in every location where you want to acquire. So for every currency where you want to acquire, because you have a legal entity in this country. In addition to these traditional, I was not finished, sorry. In addition to these traditional PSPs, you will also have alternative payment methods like Klarna. We talked about it right before, the wallets and the local payment methods that you cannot pass. So really, there's no choice between all these different 4 lines here. You will have to do all of them, which means complex integration because you have multiple points you have to connect together. And these integrations are even more complex if you sell in multiple geographies with different type of payment methods that will be available and different acquirers, of course, also different banks and different acquirers. So there's also another model that is available aside of this, and it is PSPs that are API-based and that do the acquiring by themselves. There are some very local examples. For example, in Europe, we have Molly, and more global, we would have examples like Stripe and also Adyen. For these cases, the acquisition is done by the PSP itself, so you don't need to redo your integration for every location where you have a legal entity. And these PSPs also normally aggregate LPMs and wallets. So with a single integration, you will be able to have access to multiple payment methods. Advantages and disadvantages of both these methods. The traditional one, of course, gives heavy integration costs, but you will be able to negotiate directly with the banks and have acquiring costs that will be very low. On the other hand, if you choose a PSP that does the acquisition, you will have lower integration costs with a single API, but you will also have higher transaction costs that will come with the service. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Anton. You're actually absolutely correct on the complexity of the payment methods. Indeed, various group of customers and various countries requires a different approach in terms of payment methods. And now we're going to discover how to use this approach from the eCommerce side. So now we're going to discuss the multi-site approach. Many customers and many sellers, in fact, prefer to have a different website depending on their geography. It could be country, region, or sub-region, depending on the product types, brands, and maybe even customer segments. And different websites, of course, could have a different payment methods. And in order to implement this approach, the e-commerce solution has to be flexible enough. Luckily, eCommerce is. So eCommerce allows you to allow or disallow payment methods based on the currencies, based on the regions, addresses, billing or shipping, and some other parameters like the customer group and so on. And of course, in order to make them work, you have to know which specific website requires an appropriate payment method. Next slide, please. And the final of our 4 typical use cases, the marketplace use case, also called B2B2C. This is, let me remind you, use case when you have an intermediate person between the buyer and the seller. Requires also minor touch in many areas. Specifically, in terms of the payment methods and payment needs, marketplace requires such thing as a split payment. So split payment is a solution that allows you to split the payment done by the customer who actually purchased several products per seller. So let's say if the customer purchased, let's say, 3 or 4 products from different sellers, this approach, split payments, allows you to split it literally, like 2 or 3 or 5 smaller payments, and proceed with these payments separately per each vendor or per each seller. Usually it is the responsibility of the administrator, but luckily Stripe can help us a lot in this area, and we can utilize Stripe API and Stripe capabilities to do that from the ECommerce side. I would like also to quickly mention other hybrid models like B2B2B and again, various combinations of business to customer and business to business models, but in many cases, they require the same thing as the marketplace. And now we're going to switch to the solution landscape. Again, we're going to cover these 4 primary use cases and see what kind of best practices and solution you could use for each of them. The integration, of course, could depend on the structure of your website or of your business, on the agreements you're using for your, again, agreement between the buyer and seller using in your application. And we're going to check these scenarios and the best practices for each of them. Next slide, please.
Yes, thanks a lot. So let us first see what is a typical ordering workflow for B2B, and we can see right here that it is extremely different, at least in its traditional approach from what we see in B2C. First, the purchase. The purchase can, of course, be done on the website by browsing the catalog. It could be eventually done also by any other means. And a lot of times it can be done through e-procurement systems that are directly at the inside the buyer's information system, and that would be connected to the catalog of a seller. We are talking also, of course, today mainly about e-commerce, but we have to keep that in mind because you will have some hybrid approaches most of the time, especially for larger companies who will have different types of clients. From there, the order will be created for the seller, who will generate an invoice, which is sent to the buyer. The buyer will pay this invoice, which can be collected in multiple installments, or exactly the opposite, multiple invoices at the same time, maybe at a regular time in year. And finally, you will have a reconciliation of the flow that we have seen before. Could we go to the next slide, please? What did I show you that? Because in the composable architecture, and we are moving a lot in these directions, it can be interesting to move the invoicing software in its own brick, actually. So this is something that can be managed, for example, by the ERP, by the e-commerce solution, but it can also be managed by SaaS solutions like Stripe. With that, you would be able to generate invoices that would be compliant with the different regulations, and the regulations can vary a lot depending on the country. Even inside Europe, you will have a different way of doing invoices if you're, for example, in Italy or if you're in Belgium. You will be able to send these invoices. You will be able to accept payments for these invoices online with credit cards, debit cards, ACH, debit, but also offline with the bank transfers that we have talked about before. For accounts receivables, from there, retrieve failed payments, manage collections, send email reminders, manage the tax rates dynamically. They can change eventually between the time the invoice was created and the time it is issued. And finally, reporting and reconciliation. So these are all bricks that you can take apart to have a full composable architecture for these complex and hybrid ordering processes. And to you, Yevhen.
Thank you very much, Anton. B2B flows indeed can be very complicated, especially if you're trying to combine B2B and B2C and other kind of models all together. And in order to make them the proper, here we have a couple of integration best practices on how to do it in ECommerce and how to use the Stripe to make it work properly. So now let us go one by one and see all the typical payment integration scenarios or approaches and see how you can implement them using the ECommerce and the Stripe. The first one, the typical payment method called the payment terms is, as I have mentioned, the agreement between the buyer and the seller. Usually it assumes that there is a specific number of days that's required for the buyer to pay to the seller. They call net 30, net 60, which means 30 days, 60 days, and so on. And in eCommerce, you could assign them either to specific customers or to the customer groups to simplify the management. So each specific customer or each specific customer group could have its own payment term or its own agreement. So both buyer and seller will be aware of it, and both buyer and seller can proceed accordingly. Sometimes if you need to provide some kind of unusual payment processing or payment logic, you can use so-called a dummy payment method. Dummy payment method is, well, just a simple payment method, one of the payment methods you have in or out of the box, like check money order or something like that, that you could name differently and use it if you want to implement that custom scenario. It's very simple. You can do it out of the box or with a minor customization just to provide a slightly better user experience. And it can do the same thing as the payment terms. The only difference, it does not require a payment term assigned to the customer or customer groups. So you have full flexibility to use it anytime and any way you like. Regarding the B2C, we always recommend to have at least one credit card method configured because many customers, both B2B and B2C, really like credit cards. It's simple. If you could save the credit card, it allows you to have even better user experience. And that's one of the use cases where you can use Stripe. And again, if you want to, you can implement another payment methods for the credit card. For example, if you want to split the payment or you want to do something very unusual. But again, the standard payment methods like the Stripe usually covers almost all use cases. When you're starting working with multiple customers and customer groups, you often want to restrict usage of payment method depending on the customer or customer group. That's why our commerce offers you the payment rules, restrictions, and expressions to personalize payment methods or make it available or not available to the specific customer group website. Or you can use, again, other parameters, business addresses, shipping addresses, total, the full context of your current shopping list or an order, all this information available. Again, you can use them to allow, disallow usage of each specific payment method. And finally, very simple recommendation, just make sure that at least one payment method is available. Make sure there is at least one default one for every customer or customer group. This way, they will be able to proceed with the checkout. Continuing our B2B and B2C journey, we're going to switch to the combined approach. Well, let's say we have multiple websites which implements B2B and B2C. All the recommendations mentioned before are still valid here. Again, you can do this per website. But in addition to that, on the various websites, you can configure various currencies. Let's say if you are working with the US and Europe, obviously you would like to use, let's say, default currency as US dollar in US websites and euro in European website. And you could also set a different prices, again, per website, or if you want even per customer or per customer group. You could also share integrations between different websites. Let's say you have the same Stripe account and you want to share it between the US website and the European website. That's absolutely possible. But if it's not the case, let's say because of some kind of legal reason, you would like to use different accounts, again, you can create two instances of the Stripe integration, assign each to its own website and use them properly. And continuing the topic of the payment integration, you also have to remember about the checkout. So payment is one of the crucial steps in the checkout. And now Anton is going to tell us a bit more on how to do it properly. Anton?
Anton, you are muted. You may unmute.
I had to do that at one point. Yes, so we have seen that there's a lot of complexity around the different things that you have to configure for your payment methods. We have seen also that you do have the tools inside Oro to manage that. The question is also, how much do you want to manage by yourself? Because all of this is extremely complex. And if you are selling in locations like Europe, you will have different needs according to your client types, but also according to the location. And US, you would have exactly the same thing with the different states, not with the payment methods, but maybe with the ones that would be preferred. Complexity comes also from the user interface, because you will have to set up all these different methods that sometimes work in a very different way, and have them have a common workflow that looks unified and that gives the best experience for your customers. A very nice thing to offer is also one-click checkout directly on the product pages, whether it is for B2B and B2C. And we have talked about the complexity of the payment methods, about different payment methods being available depending on the local entity that you would use, but also depending on the user, and also different preferences from the users. Could we please go to the next slide? So around that, what are we doing at Stripe? On top of what Oro gives with the different configurations and the user groups, where you can already decide broadly which payment methods and payment method types would be available and in which geographies, and for every customer. We also leverage machine learning to filter and to sort these payment methods to maximize the conversion. And on top of that, we offer an interface that you can see here in this slide. We offer an interface that is unified and that works with all these different payment methods, and that will be localized for any country in the world. So with this optimized checkout suite, one of the great things also is that it is a multi-payment methods integration, meaning that adding a new payment method, for example, a new local bank redirect, is something that can be done very simply by going to the Stripe dashboard and just clicking on a button. It also means that when we will be adding extra payment methods in the future for Stripe, for example, we have a lot of plans to add new BNPL methods, including BNPL methods that are specifically tailored for the B2B. Well, when these new payment methods will be available, if you are using this type of integration, you will not have to update it, and the new payment methods will be available as soon as it comes out with Stripe. Next slide, please.
Yep, having this kind of nice and easy to handle payment methods on the Stripe side is indeed a relief when you are trying to customize your account and you want to make it simple and user-friendly. And now we're going to switch to the fourth model we haven't discussed yet regarding the best practices, and we're going to talk about the marketplace, so B2B2C. What Oro can offer you here. So first of all, every seller or every vendor of a product could set his own prices to the products he is selling. So this way he could define exactly what kind of the price will be for each customer group, if it's support, of course, or if, let's say, you have multiple websites, again, you can do it per website too. Second, regarding the purchasing, we need to split the initial payment done by the buyer into the multiple payments for the seller, and we also have to do the same thing with the orders. So when, let's say, the customer is submitting one order, every seller receiving its own small part of that order or sub-order, and by doing that, he can process his own payments and invoices separately from the other vendors or the other sellers. And again, of course, you have to do the same thing with the payments. So when the buyer pays for the order, application has to split it into the smaller ones, again, per seller. And here, Oro Commerce is extensively relying on the Stripe integration to make it happen.
Building marketplaces is something that is actually extremely difficult and that will require very heavy infrastructure. Oro does provide the way to split your payments, and this is one part of it, but there will be other parts which will be due in parts to regulation. For example, in Europe, if you have a marketplace, you cannot take payments directly on your bank account and after give the money back to all the merchants. You would need, if you wanted to do that, to use specific type of bank accounts, escrow accounts, and eventually also get extra licenses to be able to do that. So the compliance rules are less important, of course, in some regions of the world, but if you are building this type of solution, it's a good thing to build it resiliently in the first version so that it will be applicable in other regions of the world. So regulation has a big impact on the way you are doing the payouts, but not only. It also has a big impact on the way you onboard the sellers and the service providers inside your marketplace. Because as a marketplace, you have to do what we call the KYC, the Know Your Customer, ask a lot of questions to the merchants. These questions will, of course, be different depending on the location of the marketplace operator itself. So with Stripe, and this is something that is handled by the Oro connector, we handle split payments and the payouts after that on the bank accounts or even on credit cards, on payment cards for the merchants, totally compliantly by using Stripe accounts and a system that we call Stripe Connect. So with this system, you do not need extra licenses and you do not need to create specific type of bank account to hold on the funds that were paid by the clients until you are able to give them back to the merchants. Same for onboarding. We provide a full solution here where the forms are hosted on the Stripe site, are completely localized also according to language, but also according to all the different local regulations, which can vary extremely. So everything we did at Stripe was build all this marketplace infrastructure and do it globally, so you didn't have to do it by yourselves. And today it works out of the box integrated with the Oro connector.
All right, so we have completed the theoretical part of our webinar. So we have checked the typical flows, how to implement them, and what kind of best practices we have around them. Now let's get our hands a bit dirty and check one of the real use cases and what actually you can do and how you can do it. We have picked the multiple websites use case as one of the most typical ones. And in order to give an example, we need to configure payments for the application with two websites, one for the B2B and one for the B2C channels. So the first requirement here, we need to create multiple customer groups for each of the B2B contract type. So we have multiple contracts, so we have multiple types and customer groups for each of them. Create and assign payment terms for each of these groups and add payment terms integration to make it visible at the storefront, so the customer will be able to use this method only at the B2B website. Here you can see how you can do it from the management console of the eCommerce. At the first screenshot, you can see the configuration of the integration for the payment term. The second screenshot provides you an example of how you can assign payment term to the customer group, in this case to the partners customer group. And finally, in order to make them work together, you have to create a payment term. And this payment term, you have to tell what kind of integration you're going to use. And in addition, and here we have an additional restriction per website. So this kind of payment method will be available only at the B2B website. The second requirement for our use case is adding a Stripe integration to let B2C customers pay with credit card and again configure the payment rule, but this one only for the B2C website. And again, same approach. On the first screenshot, you are seeing configuration of the Stripe integration with all the credentials, while on the second screenshot, you are seeing the payment rule. Again, this one associated only to the B2C website. The final requirement here is a bit more interesting. We need to add a new field to the customer called can use money order, create check money order integration, and make it work or allow it only for the customers who have this flag of this field set to the true, both for the B2B and B2C website. In order to do that, we have to use an expression, customer can use money order. Here you can see how to do it. Again, the first slide is the typical integration customization. The second slide, here you can see that special field called can use money order. This one is set to yes, which means that this partner indeed can use money order. And finally, we are setting the expression for the appropriate payment rule. And in this payment rule, as you can see, we have set expression customer can use money order equals to true and allow it both for the B2B and B2C website. And in the storefront, that's what you see. On the left side, you are seeing the typical part of the checkout. And here customer has a choice between the payment term and the money order. So here I was using the customer with the flag set to true. That's why payment method money order is available. While on the right side, the same happening on the B2C website. Here, instead of the payment term, you are seeing the credit card via Stripe integration. That's what we configured for all the B2C customers, while the money order is also visible because this test customer also have this flag set to yes. And now it's time for takeaways. We almost completed our webinars, so let us quickly sum up and see what kind of useful advice and useful information we have seen during this webinar. So first of all, the use cases. When you're working with the B2B or B2B plus BTC or any other use case, you have to start from defining the business models you are working with, understanding your use cases, because use cases can be different, again, depending on the country, depending on your geography in general, depending on the business flow you're implementing, and so on. And depending on that, you have to know your customers and their needs. The second thing you have to take care is the actual payment methods. Again, you have to pick the most convenient payment methods for each of your customer groups or even each of your customer or website or region, whatever. And when it is an option, you have to give your customer a choice. If you know for sure, let's say that this country requires payment method X, of course, it has to be always available. But if, let's say, there is a payment methods Y or Z, which is also sometimes used, you should provide this kind of option to your customers. And in order to configure it properly, you have to implement all these methods, configure them in the system, and make sure that will be available to the specific group of your customer, for the specific country, to the specific, with a specific condition. You have to take care of this thing and configure them per website, per customer, or per customer group. And that's all from our side. Aaron?
All right. So far, we have no questions submitted. For everyone online, you should see in the bottom of your Zoom bar, there should be a Q&A button. Please feel free to use that. You can also use the chat and submit any questions you have for Yevhen or Antoine or me, but I don't have anything interesting to say. So you should really ask them questions. So we'll give it a few minutes and see if anybody has anything. Oh, we have one question coming in from Ola. Is it possible to have one-click payment of product detail page? So I think that's the typical sort of wallet implementation where the one-click button, the wallet method, is showing on the PDP. So you bypass the entire cart and checkout flow.
So answering this question, yes, overall, this thing could be done as a customization on the Oro side. In order to do that, you have to have a default billing address set, default shipping address set. One way or the other configure the default payment method and invoice method either per customer and per customer group. And under the bonnet, when you click in the button, you could just proceed with the checkout workflow. Manual automatically, it's up to you to decide how you want to do it. And in the very end, the order will be created.
So at Stripe, we do have a specific integration for this use case that is called Quick Purchase Elements. It features all the most popular wallets. So of course, Apple Pay, Google Pay, but also Amazon Pay, and also in EMEA, not in the US, we have PayPal. And this and extra last wallet that is featured inside this integration is called Link by Stripe, which is I would say the answer of Stripe to PayPal. It is a meter payment method. Once again, you are able to save your payment methods, your credit card number, for example, globally with it. So if a user has already purchased on a website that uses Link by Stripe and agreed to save his payment method, they will be available after that for all the other merchants that have this feature enabled. This is something that is quite popular around the merchants that use Stripe, because of course it's very good for conversions. People just hate copying and pasting their credit card numbers online. So purchase is very important, yes.
Very true. Another question has come in from Ben. Does Stripe's test mode work with all of these different types of global payment methods?
There might be one or two extremely small exceptions where you have to go to live mode and do some micro testing. But in most cases, yes, all of them will work with the dashboard of Stripe in test mode. For people who might not know how that works, you can open a Stripe account directly without contacting Stripe. It is something that is quite unique. You onboard by yourself. You don't have to give full information, but as soon as you have done that, you can create your own test integrations. You will have test credit card numbers and everything that is available, and the full Stripe dashboard will be available in test mode. So it is extremely helpful to create your own integrations.
That is fantastic.
And Aura also supports the test mode on the Stripe integration, and all the operations that is done on the Stripe side will be automatically reflected on the Aura side too.
Very good. And a reminder, a public service announcement for everyone. If you are building a site and if you have been testing payment methods in test mode, please remember to swap out your test mode configuration for production as you launch the site, and don't leave it in test mode. I'm not saying that I've ever done that, but it's possible that I might have done that once. Another question coming from Ola again. Is it possible to make payment by cryptocurrency?
I am not certain that it's available right now. And so with Stripe, at least it's not possible in all geographies. It might be available in the US, but I have to check again.
Answering this question in general, in Aura, you can create your own payment method. If you want, you can integrate it. If you want, you can make it look like a Stripe. If you don't, you can make it completely differently. But overall, you can implement any payment methods as long as you have some kind of API or some kind of payment service provider you can work with that can confirm that this payment indeed has happened.
Fantastic. Ola, I will get your email address from the registration and see if we can get more clarity from Stripe maybe afterwards. Antoine, if this is something that we could look up and get back to Ola so that they can know.
Totally, because there's a lot of things, but I'm just absolutely not a specialist of crypto.
Few who are.
I think that's at least one thing we do have in the US is payouts in stablecoin. So USDC, if I remember right. That
okay,
can
back to the merchant.
Yes, yes. So payouts to merchants, and this can be extremely useful to onboard merchants who are in more difficult regions of the world.
Yes. That is all of the open questions. We'll give it one more minute to see if anyone comes up with anything else. But while we're waiting, I want to thank our panelists for spending their time with you, with all of us, and sharing that knowledge. Again, a reminder, next week, next Wednesday, the Oro release candidate for 6.0 partner demo. This is ahead of the GA, ahead of the public demos. If you want to get a sneak peek and a look at it, if you want to have a chance to speak with our senior product leadership and engineering leadership, about what you see and ask them questions, please register for that. Happy to make a link available. Reach out to me if you don't already have one. And we want to have as many people as we can interacting with the early access of our product. And there are no more questions. So I think that's a wrap. Thank everybody for your time. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Yvonne and Antoine, for sharing all of your information with us. And we will do another Tech Talk next month. Be on the lookout for communication from Oro on that topic.
Thank you, Aaron, for presenting.
Thanks a lot.
Have a wonderful day.